Welcome back to the Pylon Camp Podcast, episode 12. If you're new to the channel, if you're new to the podcast, these are podcasts where we talk about football, and talk about NFL coverage. Not too much about fantasy. If that's your thing, check out our YouTube content. But you're not going to find anything about that here in these podcast episodes. We have a lot to get through. If you follow us on Twitter, I did put out that this is going to be the best podcast episode yet, and I'm ready to fulfill on that tweet. I have so much prepared for this episode. A lot of stuff to go through. A lot of fun things to talk about. But before we get into it, just want to say I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to be here talking to you guys. I'm ready to hear your feedback, whether that's on Twitter or Instagram or wherever you communicate with me. But I want to talk about the first story of the week. And I think this story probably was the biggest story of this week and last week. And it may come to a shock as some because it's a team that nobody really likes to talk about. And if they do want to talk about them, it's usually in a negative light. And that's our Daniel Jones and Joe Judge done in New York. And I want to tell a story before we talk about this story or this topic. When I graduated college, I was a young buck ready to take the world by storm. I had just landed a very big job at a very successful or up-and-coming financial firm. And, you join the firm, you join at the analyst level, and why do they hire you? Like, when you go through that interview process, how many interviews there are, when you go through, you talk to the CFO, when you talk to the senior analysts, when you talk to the managers, however many rounds of interviewing you have to do, what do you have to do personally? You have to look presentable, you have to sound professional, and you have to be ready to perform in whatever environment you are put in. As I started with this firm, I started obviously as an analyst at the analyst level, and I had a manager. And that manager, to his credit, it was during COVID, so there was no office time. There was no time to just sit next to each other and crunch things out or just talk about how this new environment that I'm put in even works in any facet. There's no way of him passing on knowledge to me outside of scheduled meetings, scheduled Zoom calls, and we never even saw each other face to face throughout my entire year at this firm. And that manager, I was on a project for about, I want to say 6 months, 6 to 5 months. I was on my first project, huge project. I was the first analyst ever in the history of the firm to be put on a double implementation. And if you don't know what that means, that's all right. It's not important. But the point is, it was a big task for someone who has no experience. No other analyst this firm has hired had ever put an analyst in a situation like this. It was very difficult for me to succeed in that environment. Why? I didn't have proper coaching. I did not have proper guidelines, and standards were not made clear. Why am I telling you this? Well, with Daniel Jones, what I have learned in the past 2 months of me being, I'm not going to say in the media industry, but trying to get into the sports media industry, I have learned that if there is a narrative, true, false, accurate, or inaccurate, it will get traction. If there is any outlet for this narrative and people are buying into it and they're clicking on it and they're liking it, they're commenting on it, it will take traction. With Daniel Jones, what is the only thing you have heard about this kid, whether you watch the Giants or not, if you watch ESPN, whether you watch The Herd, whether you watch Good Morning Football, whether you watch YouTube channels like this one, or if you're listening to our podcast, if you listen to podcasts like this one, what is the only thing you've heard about Daniel Jones and the New York Giants? They suck, he's not a franchise quarterback, and he turns the ball over way too much. I didn't take down Daniel Jones' turnover numbers, but his turnovers have declined drastically. And I mean drastically. What is the one thing that you have heard about Daniel Jones if you could rewind the clocks back to August, September of 2021, the 2021 NFL season? there was a lot of comparison to Josh Allen. Can Daniel Jones take the year 3 leap? Can he be successful in year 3 with the New York Giants? Because if he doesn't, he's done. That's the new narrative of football. Thank courtesy of Josh Allen, because he was a borderline bust, borderline out as a franchise quarterback, has a breakout year in 2020, and now quarterbacks are set on a timer for 3 years. If you are not successful in 3 years, you are not the guy. And I want to take this comparison and compare the two quarterbacks further, but I want to analyze their situation for you. Before Josh Allen broke out in 2020, COVID year, I want to look at the situation he was in and the coaching staff he had. Before Frank Reich got there, the Buffalo Bills were a disaster, an absolute dumpster fire. They were borderline bottom of the barrel. Well, there really was no bottom of the barrel with the AFC East, because it was either the Patriots are winning it or someone else is popping their head like a pimple and they're going to be gone the next year. In 2018, the Buffalo Bills offensive line ranked 26th in the NFL. How did Josh Allen play that year as a rookie? Didn't throw that many touchdowns, had an astronomical amount of turnovers. In 2019, Josh Allen got a little bit better. People were still concerned about the accuracy, still concerned about can this kid rein it in? He has the arm talent, but can he put it together? Offensive line ranked 21. In 2020, the Buffalo Bills go out and acquire Stephon Diggs. They bring in Frank Reich. Actually, forget if they brought him in 2019. But the point remains, they have the coach. They get him a weapon. The offensive line ranked 10th in the NFL. So you give this kid a very good quarterback coach, a dominant wide receiver, and a top 10 offensive line, and Josh Allen breaks out. Now let's talk about Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones' rookie year. The kid throws 24 touchdowns in 12 games. Didn't start 2, it was hurt for 2. Would have broken Baker Mayfield's touchdown record had he played all 16. That offensive line ranked 17th and was in a system under Pat Shurmur. Let's fast forward to 2020. Pat Shurmur gets fired. They bring in Joe Judge, and more importantly, they bring in Jason Garrett. That offensive line ranked 31st in the NFL. What happened to Daniel Jones? A dramatic decline. Do you see the correlation here? How when Josh Allen's offensive line got better, his play got better? And as Daniel Jones' offensive line got worse, he has gotten worse. In 2021 so far, through Week 10, the Giants rank 31st in offensive line. Daniel Jones is getting ready to go into his third offensive scheme since entering the NFL and still has no protection. Now, I want to address the one-read quarterback thing. If you've ever played Madden and you pick your play, and if it slants, curls, or sticks, because that's the entirety of the Giants playbook, when the red line is not open, what happens? You get sacked, especially if you have a bad offensive line. Daniel Jones was not a one-read quarterback in 2019. It was actually the complete opposite if you watch his tape. But because of the environment that he was put in, where it is literally impossible for this kid to succeed or progress as a quarterback, we have no idea what this kid's talent level is. And I know a lot of people, specifically Giants fans, are, I don't think he's the guy, but there's just so gray about it. There's no black and whiteness about it. He's our guy, I hate him. They're just like these gray takes, and I hate gray takes. You either need to be on a side or you're not, because you either need to be able to be man enough or woman enough to be like, yo, I was wrong or I am right. You can't be this gray blob and then just be like, oh, well, actually, I was more black than white, or I was more white than black. No, that's not me. For me, I have always sided with, we have no idea what Daniel Jones is, and the potential that there is a reason why there are two sides to the Daniel Jones debate. If you take away Daniel Jones' rookie year, obviously you move off of him. There's no potential. There's no hope. If you keep the rookie year, you see a mobile quarterback with a good arm and can throw 24 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. And he's cut down on the fumbles since then. That's why there is hope for Daniel Jones. Now, for me, as a football fan, I am confident, and I'll put it out there, that Daniel Jones will be a successful quarterback in the NFL wherever he starts, if the Giants decide to move off of him. He's not going to be a Sam Darnold, because there was never that potential. There was never those flashes with Sam Darnold. Whereas with Jones, you have seen so much potential. And if you ask any Giants fan, like, which quarterback would succeed in this system, there are 3 answers that I could think of off the top of my head. And this is just an outsider looking in. Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes. Because Russell Wilson, what's his big... Giants fans keep saying, oh, well, let's just bring in Russell Wilson. What is Russell Wilson's biggest complaint in Seattle? That the offensive line sucks. Yeah, let's bring him into New York where there is a worse offensive line. I think the NFC East is its own breed of dumb when it comes to fans, if I'm being completely honest. But the bottom line is, if you're a Giants fan and you're listening to this, your team will not be good until you fix the offensive line. Doesn't matter if you have Tom. It doesn't matter if you have Jesus himself behind that offensive line. It will not be a good football team until that line is fixed, because you have weapons that can't stay healthy, and you can't protect any. You couldn't protect. I don't know. Couldn't protect anything. Let's talk about Joe Judge for a second. Why I think Joe Judge should not be done in New York. It has nothing to do with who he is as a coach. It has more to do with you need to see things through to the end. Whereas with the situation with New York, you have so many open-ended questions that will be answered within 1 year if you're just patient. Patience for 1 more year, and then you could do whatever you want with the franchise. Because here's the 2 questions I think you need answers more than anything. Do we have a real franchise quarterback in Daniel Jones? You need to look yourself in the mirror if you're John Mara and answer one question. Have I given this kid the opportunity to succeed? Because the answer is no. And do we have a franchise coach in Joe Judge? Because the Giants, if they fire Joe Judge this year, have gone through 5 coaches in 5 years, I'm pretty sure. Or 4 coaches in 5 years. If you wait a year and you keep the band, you can do whatever you want with Gettleman, because you're going to hire someone in-house anyway, which I think is stupid. But if you keep the band together for 1 more year, you find out the answer to Jones, you find the answer to Judge, and then Dave Gettleman can ride off into the sunset. But I think Gettleman's gone anyway. But why I'm saying they should keep Gettleman for 1 more year no matter what, they're not going to, but why I would, or I guess if you hire an interim GM from within for 1 year and then just let him go, which is not realistic at all, but you don't want to bring a GM in and say, hey, by the way, you have to keep Jones and Judge for a year. Because that is the exact same thing they did to Dave Gettleman with Eli Manning and wanting to win now. That is just going to set your franchise up for a complete and utter disaster. So are Jones and Judge done in New York? I don't know. I don't know if they're done in New York. Do I think they should be after 2021? No. I err on the side of bring them back for 2022. Do whatever you want with GM. I think that you're going to screw it up either way. Fix the offensive line in the offseason. Because here's why. If Jones isn't your answer, then you're going to draft a quarterback who's going to be in a much better situation. Andrew Thomas is going to be a better football player. You're going to have 2, potentially a Pro Bowl center in Tyler Linderbaum and a Pro Bowl right tackle or guard in Ike Mikwanu if they draft those 2, or Kenyon Green. And you put a new quarterback in a better quarterback class into the situation. Where if you draft a quarterback this year, you're going to put him in the same situation as Jones. And I don't think any of the candidates coming out this year are better than Daniel Jones. You could disagree with that or not. You could agree or disagree with that. But that's the first story I want to talk about. And then I stole this segment from Colin Cowherd's The Herd, but the 3-word game. And basically, the gist of this game, or this segment, is if you've never seen it before, is it forces you to describe games, football games, succinctly in 3 words. So, that being said, we're going to go through these games pretty quickly, and we're going to talk about them. I'm going to give a few sentences on them, but we're going to summarize them in three words. So, let's go. First game, Bears at Lions. 4th quarter kryptonite. The Lions lose another game in the 4th quarter. I have lost count of how many games they have lost in the 4th quarter. I think Dan Campbell is becoming more of a problem than he is a solution. The Lions have a lot of building blocks in DeAndre Swift, Penei Sewell, but I think they have to start looking to next year. Obviously, they have to start looking next year, but I think they also do need to go into this like the Arizona Cardinals did and think to themselves, do we have the right coach? Do we have the right, obviously not the right quarterback, but do we have the right coach? Because that is very important. Next game. Raiders at Cowboys. Don't make excuses. All I've heard from Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys are, oh, well, we didn't have our left tackle. We didn't have Amari Cooper. We didn't have CeeDee Lamb. Okay, there are countless teams that go into games all the time missing key pieces, and then Mike McCarthy's also blaming the refs, saying there should have been a pass interference call. That is not, you should not put yourself in a situation, especially if you're as talented as the Dallas Cowboys are this year. You should never put yourself in a situation where the game is determined by the refs. That is just my opinion on that. Next game, Bills at Saints. Don't doubt Diggs. I think the Bills are a very one-dimensional team, and I think they have to play to that one dimension and play to it as much as they possibly can. And that is, they are a pass-first offense that cannot run the ball. They signed Matt Breida and benched Zach Moss as a healthy scratch for the first time. They're feeding Matt Breida in the red zone. He is their red zone answer from the backfield. But still, I think Josh Allen is their best rushing option. And if they're going to throw, I think Stephon Diggs needs way more targets than he's getting. In this Saints game where they won 31-9, Diggs had 9 targets, 7 catches, 74 yards, and a touchdown. He is your best player on offense besides Josh Allen. You need to get him the ball. You need to let him create in space and attack down the field. Buccaneers at Colts. Jonathan Taylor, who? Leonard Fournette. I'm a huge Leonard Fournette guy. I've gotten into arguments with my brother about this countless times. He hates Leonard Fournette. I thought he was the most underappreciated player on the Jaguars. Leonard Fournette, 17 carries, 100 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, 7 receptions on 8 targets, 31 yards, and a touchdown. 4 total touchdowns for Leonard Fournette. And why this is important to me is we're now seeing that the Bucs are as hurt as they could possibly be. They are now adding a very potent new element in this offense through Leonard Fournette. That was one of their biggest struggles last season, as Ronald Jones was kind of their answer at the running back position, but he wasn't that good. And then we saw the resurgence of Leonard Fournette in the playoffs. I think that with Leonard Fournette playing as playoff Lenny at Week 12, they're in a very good spot so long as he stays healthy. And luckily, they have Ronald Jones, who is a very serviceable backup. He probably could be one of the best backups in the NFL. But I think that if Leonard Fournette continues to play well, this Bucs team has a brand new element on their offense, and it is a very, very potent element, which when you have Tom Brady at quarterback, he's going to take full advantage of that. Jets at Texans. Fundamental football wins. Despite Zach Wilson continuing to turn the ball over, the Jets had 157 yards on the ground, 1 takeaway, and 8 QB hits. This Jets defense is starting to look better and better each week. I have done mock drafts. We do a mock draft on our YouTube channel every Monday. And I have done a ton of mock drafts for the Jets. I think with Robert Saleh, he's going to want to build this team like he built the San Francisco 49ers, and that is from within the trenches. He's going to want to address the defense first. And with where their picks are because of how bad Seattle is playing, they potentially could have one of the best defenses in football next year, potentially landing someone like Kayvon Thibodeau, Aiden Hutchinson, and a Derek Stingley or Kyle Hamilton. They will have a very, very good defense with a potential lockdown corner and a ball hawk safety who could do more than just play safety. He could play in the box like Jamal Adams. He could line up against a slot wide receiver. He can literally do everything. The Jets need to continue to play fundamental football, run the ball on the ground, force takeaways on defense, and pressure the quarterback, which their defensive line has looked better each week, and let Zach Wilson just continue to make mistakes, continue to do his thing, because you're going to learn quicker than not. Is this your guy? Is this not your guy? But maybe he will develop at a faster pace if you just let him play ball how he wants to play ball. Eagles at Giants. Run, Eagles, run. Jalen Hurts, 14 for 31, 129 yards and 3 interceptions. The Eagles had 208 yards of rushing, and they didn't really start running the ball as often as they should have. I wish I wrote down the split of how many passes were thrown in the first half versus second. But the Eagles, Giants fans were literally chanting, throw the ball at Jalen Hurts because he was getting destroyed by the defense. Absolutely destroyed. But he also, to his credit, Jalen Hurts is a phenomenal athlete, and the RPO is the Giants didn't have an answer for it. I just don't know why they didn't stick to their game plan and run the ball all over the Giants. And the Giants have a rising superstar in Xavier McKinney. I just wanted to throw that out there. I think he has 5 interceptions on the season so far. Panthers at Dolphins. That's all, folks. Cam Newton, 5 for 21, 2 interceptions. McCaffrey's out for the year. The season's over. Last podcast episode, I literally brought up the point of why is everybody getting so excited over Cam Newton. He does not bring any new exciting element to this offense. His arm is shot. He just, I don't get it. I didn't know why this brought excitement. Don't know anything about it. And if you follow the channel, you know about my theory about quarterbacks with no tape in the new system. It's almost like an automatic win, it feels like. That was why they beat the Cardinals without Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. But Panthers, they have promise on defense. They need to look to next season. They might need to look for a new head coach. I don't think it's anything against Matt Rule's talent. I don't know if he wants to be in the NFL anymore. So that might be on their plate for the offseason, and they definitely need to draft a quarterback. Titans at Patriots, time to panic. I actually got into, I don't want to say an argument, but a discussion with a Titans fan on Instagram. He was kind of upset because someone had posted, it was like week 9 of the kid's post of like his takeaway for week 9 was the Titans are going to be fine without Derrick Henry. And I commented like the Titans are about to be a shell of themselves, just wait. And this was the first week without Derrick Henry, so nobody knew how they were going to game plan. This was the win against the Rams. Rams, who have slumped since, had no idea how the Titans were going to come out, how they were going to move the ball, if they were still going to run the ball. And since then, the Titans have been horrible. It really is overthinking the obvious if you thought the Titans were going to be fine. They built their team around Derrick Henry, and to their credit, they did a very successful job about that. Derrick Henry is an exceptional talent. He was playing, as you all know if you listen to this podcast, according to me, at a front-runner MVP level. Nobody wanted to give him credit for that. Now the Titans had 93 passing yards against the Patriots, and they still rushed for 270 yards. They had 200-yard backs, which is actually crazy. But that's how good the Titans are on the ground. They need to keep running the ball. They need to take the ball out of Ryan Tannehill's hands. A.J. Brown and Julio Jones are both on IR. Just survive until Henry gets back, and they will be all right come playoffs. It's no indictment on them. It's just they're not as good as people think without Derrick Henry. They're last time I checked, their offensive line ranked 8th in run blocking and 23rd in pass blocking. So like that, like you're not going to be good if the person you built the team around is gone. It's just facts. Steelers at Bengals, a new age of steel. This is a new brand of Steelers, whether Mike Tomlin wants it or not. You have your Juju Smith-Schusters and your Chase Claypools asking if they could play music at practice after they just lost by 30 points. I don't think that the Steelers' identity is anything to be afraid of like it used to be. Like, even as a kid, I just remember, like, the Steelers is going to be a tough... like, how do you even know this as a kid? Like, this is how dominant or, like, aggressive the Steelers culture is. Like, as a kid, I remember thinking, like, wow, watching Troy Polamalu and these other guys, like, this is a really physical football team. You had Big Bus running all over people. And you're just like, this is a very physical football team. Like, they're pretty scary. And now you could really, like, this is why Ryan Clark is getting mad on television. Like, no team is afraid to play the Steelers. And they need to go back to the they need to go to the drawing boards for next season. Because people still are out, there are people out there who still think the Steelers team can make the playoffs. And that is insane. That is actually insane. And people want to blame Mike Tomlin, which is absolutely ludicrous. They need a new quarterback, obviously. Someone said Big Ben is as mobile as a traffic cone, which I agree with. Like, that guy cannot move in the pocket. They They need to go to the drawing boards for the offseason. I think one of their really underrated needs is corner. If you're a Steelers fan listening to this, you guys really need a corner, because if you want to tell me what the problem with the Steelers defense is your pass rush is getting there, but it's a little bit banged up, but your corners aren't giving them any extra time, which is like a big part of pass rush success, is corners giving them time of locking down the routes for a split second longer so they can get to the quarterback. And this Steelers team is just weak. Like, it is just a weak team. It just reminds me of like Rocky in like Rocky 7 when he's like 50 years old and he's still fighting, and it's like, Rocky, just put the gloves down, man. Like, it's all right, you did it, but like, let's pass the torch to Michael B. Jordan. Well, let's let him be the guy for now. Next game, Falcons at Jaguars. The Atlanta Cordero Pattersons. Cordero Patterson, 16 yards, 108 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 targets, 27 receiving yards, and he was second most on the team in receiving yards with 27 on 2 targets. That was more than Kyle Pitts. That was more than Olamide Zaccheaus. Anybody else in that depth chart? The only person in front of him was Russell Gage. If Cordero Patterson is not there, this team is just nothing. They literally do nothing. I really think if we're going by the definition of most valuable player, Cordero Patterson should actually be in the conversation, because this team can't do anything without him. Apparently he has more of an impact than Calvin Ridley. But, yeah, this guy's nuts. Chargers at Broncos, any given day. I think the Chargers are doing too much. They're asking too much of Justin Herbert. They're asking him to throw 44 times, which is like way too much in my opinion. And if you listen to this podcast or follow this YouTube channel, you know I'm a huge Justin Herbert supporter. But like, let's remember, he still is a sophomore quarterback. He still is a young talent in the NFL. They need to play fundamental football. They need to run the ball with Eckler or Roundtree way more than they are. They had 13 rushing attempts come from running backs. 17 total rushing attempts, 4 came from Herbert. And Herbert's been running the ball great. But they absolutely need to go back to playing fundamental football. They need to go back to just running the ball as much as they possibly can. Not as much as they possibly can, but balance it out. Like, the Broncos in this game ran, I think, 31 times and threw the ball just over 20 with Drew Lock, which makes sense because it's Drew Lock. But these Chargers are a different team on any given day. They're even like, some weeks they're like, wow, this team could win the AFC. The other weeks they're like, okay, they're a young football team. So it's like really like, it was blowing my mind about it is there was that Brandon Staley quote about the purpose of running the football is to show your team you're ready to play physical. Running the ball 13 times to Austin Eckler does not show to me that you believe in that quote whatsoever. Like, at all. Rams at Packers. Aaron owns Jalen. Aaron threw the ball 7 times at Jalen Ramsey and completed 7 passes. There is absolutely zero fear in this Packers offense. Aaron Rodgers, to me, is playing like the most mind-blowing, hash-slinging, trash-bringing, no, I'm just kidding. But he really is playing like the best football I have seen from a quarterback maybe in my whole life. This dude is just, like, people don't understand, like, he lost to the Vikings, sure, but he was playing with his entire second-string offense. They had Devontae Adams, and that was it. It was Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and A.J. Dillon. This week, David Bakhtiari still have back, so they still have a bunch of second-stringers on offense. Aaron Jones came back, but he was limited, and it's still Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers and A.J. Dillon, and he just, no fear. Threw at Jalen Ramsey 7 times, completed 7 passes, throwing at Jalen Ramsey. Rodgers could get it done with anybody. He could get it done with anybody. That's why, like, I hate the Packers, because you have this talent, and you wouldn't offer Odell Beckham more than a veteran's minimum. Like, why do you not want Aaron Rodgers to win Super Bowls and potentially be the greatest quarterback of all time? I don't get it. I do not get it. Vikings at Niners. 49ers won't die. The last podcast we did, the last thing that we talked about was it's time to blow it up. It's time to get Trey Lance starts and go on into the next season. Since then, Niners are on a 3-game win streak because they went on and won that Monday night. Then we missed the podcast. Then this is the next podcast. They have won 3 games since. They have an absolute superstar stud in Elijah Mitchell. The Vikings couldn't run on them at all. The Vikings ran with Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison, who you all know is my favorite backup running back in the NFL. I think he's the best backup running back in the NFL, not counting running backs who split snaps 40-60 or 50-50. He is, and I would say he's better than Tony Pollard, who does split that many snaps. But they both combined for 67 yards. The wild card is wide open, and really both of these teams have caught their stride. I would say the Niners have definitely caught their stride. But the Niners look really good. I think that we're not going to talk about it too much because we'll talk about them later, but I'm not counting them out anymore. I guess it was foolish of me to think that they were. I just am like, I do think that Kyle Shanahan is a little bit overrated after this season, but we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it later. Browns at Ravens. Baker will fold. I want to start right now. The newest nickname for Baker Mayfield is Baker Mayfold. This dude just literally folds every single chance he possibly can. Every chance he has to silence critics, he folds. Every chance he has to win a game, he folds. Every chance he has to do something right, something that a franchise quarterback would do, he folds. Lamar Jackson threw 4 interceptions in this game, and they still won. With 2 less possessions, the Ravens had more total yards of offense than the Browns. The Browns had 287 yards. The Ravens had 313. Baker shriveled when it was his golden opportunity to outplay his contemporary. Drafted the same year. One was at the back end of the first. He was the first overall pick. He has won MVP. He has won playoff games. He has won almost every single game this season. He has won every opportunity. He has won, I don't know how many games from behind this season. Baker Mayfield just shrivels up like SpongeBob when he gets put under a lamp in the SpongeBob movie. Next game. Seahawks at Washington football team. Russ is cooked. This has nothing to do with Russell Wilson's performance, actually. Russell Wilson played an exceptional game. This has all to do with he's just cooked in Seattle. It's done. It's over. Pete Carroll he's done. I think Seattle is going into a rebuild, and I've been thinking about it. I have no idea how they're going to do that. I don't know how many picks they have this season, but it can't be a lot. I know they don't have a first-round pick this year, and I'm 99% confident they don't have a first-round pick next year. Yeah, man, this is going to be rough for Seattle. I think Russ is out. Maybe he goes to Pittsburgh. They ship him out of conference. But it's done. It's over. Honestly, I just said at the beginning of the podcast, if you're new, we don't talk about fantasy stuff, but that was a big reason I sold DK Metcalf before this year. 1, I'm kind of out on DK Metcalf. 2, I can't deal with the stress of who's going to pop off today, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, or now Freddie Swain. And then 3, what's happening with Russ? I couldn't deal with it. It's too much pressure. Anyway, that was our first attempt at the 3-word game. Let me know if you liked it. I really enjoyed doing that. I thought it was a lot of fun. But yeah, let me know what you think about that. I definitely want to do it again in the future. Probably won't do it every week, but it's definitely a cool segment. Maybe we'll make it its own video on YouTube potentially. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. Let me know what you think about that. I thought it was good. Let's talk about our second and last story of the week after I sip this water. Parched. Anyway, all right. So this story, I saw it. Saw Peter King talk about it, and I actually didn't listen to what he has to say. I wanted to listen to it after I made this video or this podcast because I wanted to know if we're kind of on the same wavelength. So here we go. Who is more likely to shake their slump first? The Los Angeles Rams or Dallas Cowboys? So I'm recording this on Thursday. It's going to come out on Friday. I have no idea who won the game tonight yet. I haven't really watched that at all. But because I think it just started. But I want to use this example, and I want to give this story. But before we talk about this. To me, the Los Angeles Rams, if you're a baseball player, if you're a basketball player, I don't really know about football because I'm not too sure how this would work. But the Los Angeles Rams are your AAU team if you're a basketball player, or they're your travel ball team if you're a baseball player. You know, all of these kids who go through tryouts who you don't know because you're from different counties, you're from different towns, and you play very competitive competition to find out who makes the roster at the end of the day. But what the underlying factor is one, you're going to have a group of very talented, skillful athletes, whichever sport it is. Like one of the kids I know down here, he plays on the 8th best baseball team for 13-year-olds in North Carolina, and they're from all over the place. None of them live in the town we live in, and some of them drive like 2 hours to play. So they don't have any sort of familiarity with each other outside of baseball practice or baseball games, right? Same thing with, I don't know if that's that analogy directly aligns with AAU basketball, but I do understand that it's a similar concept of you come to play on an AAU team or a travel basketball team, and you have no familiarity. You don't see these kids at school. You don't see them in your town. You don't really know anything about them outside of basketball practice, outside of basketball games. The times you would spend with them outside of practice or games is on car rides, on bus rides, etc., plane rides maybe if you're at that level. But that to me, that team, those types of teams, that is the Los Angeles Rams, where you are a very talented roster. You're bringing in all these superstars: Matthew Stafford, Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, Odell Beckham, Von Miller. And you bring them in, and not Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, obviously, but you bring in these players mid-season, and you give Matt Stafford one off-season to get this together, and now he has 2 new cogs to deal with. Very important being that he's a replacement for Robert Woods, someone he did, to go for the analogy's sake, go to school with and saw every day and played football with at least for the beginning of the season, and he's gone. And his replacement is someone he's never played football with before in his entire life. Very talented, but there's no chemistry. There's no continuity. Versus Dallas, who I would argue is more like your high school football team, your high school baseball team, your high school basketball team. Kids you have seen every single day. You are spending 5 days a week, morning, noon, and half of the afternoon with every single day. And you see them at 8 a.m., 7:30, 7:50 a.m., whatever it is, all the way to 5 o'clock. You are spending almost 12 hours with these people if they're on your sports teams. You see them in the neighborhood. You play trout. If you played rec, if you played rec sports, you've seen these people all the time. And you know, as the years progress, you know who your guys are, because not too often does someone come into the school and either you don't make chemistry with them right away because if you're a baseball player, you have from fall to spring to get to know them, to hang out with them, and see them for so many hours a day. Where with Dallas, that is it. All of the important pieces on this team have spent 2 to 3 seasons together. The offensive line, it's the same unit. The wide receivers, it's the same unit. The running backs, it's the same unit. The quarterback, it is the same person. The defense, you add a linebacker. You add a corner. All of which you drafted, by the way, so they are going through the whole 9 with these veterans. It's literally a high school team where they're spending all the time together, and there is just continuity after continuity, where with the Rams, it's football and nothing else. There's no off-the-field anything with the Rams. Versus Dallas, these are people they've spent almost an entire year with now at this point. With the new guys, with the old guys, it's almost 3 years of they just know each other. They hang out. They go out in the offseason. They go on vacations together. They bye week together, and they just know where they're going to go because they've done it 3 times at this point. There is continuity with Dallas. That is why both of these teams are in slumps right now. Dallas is going to make it out first. Dallas is going to beat the Saints tonight. I don't care if there's no Mike McCarthy, who basically is a potato. Like, let's not disregard. Let's make sure that is said, that he is not important to this football team's success. But they may not have Amari Cooper. They may not have Zeke. Zeke might be limited. I don't think he will be, but who knows? They're saying he's not, but he probably will be in some capacity. And then you have Dan Quinn, who's going to step up as head coach. Okay, he's been coordinating the team all year long. You still have Kellen Moore there, who's been coordinating the team all year long. And then you have, conversely, Sean McVay, who is changing his playbook, going away from what makes his offense so amazing, and is just doing his own thing. And he's like experimenting midseason. I don't understand why. You have more talented players to run your already successful offense. Why are you changing it? Dallas is the same thing they've been all year, and everybody knows each other. Everybody likes each other. Everybody knows each other's kids. Everybody knows each other's wives. Everybody knows each other's babies' mamas. They know everything. They know everything about everybody. They're friends. They know things about each other outside of football. It's different. There's continuity with Dallas. There has always been continuity with Dallas. With the Rams, they're in trouble. They're in deep, deep trouble because this is a new animal. We are at week 12, and this is a new football team. Week 11, it was a new football team. Week 10, it was a new football team. Like, it's changing, which is not what you do not want. Identity changes during the year. Sure, you want more wrinkles, more things that are going to keep other coordinators up at night, but you don't want to change everything about yourself. But that's my take on this story of who's likely going to shake their slump first, the Los Angeles Rams or Dallas. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know on Instagram, whatever. And then we're going to go through these quickly, kind of like we did the 3-word game. But this is overreaction or underreaction. There is a third option, but I didn't think of it until just now, which is fair, if it was a fair take. But these are all takes I have seen throughout the week, and I've kind of just noted down. And I want to give my opinion on them. I don't care what they said. I just saw the headline and reacted. It was like, whoa, that's either crazy or I don't think you don't understand the magnitude of that. But let's go through those. First thing, the Chiefs are AFC champion contenders. Overreaction. The Chiefs have been hot for 4 games. They have won 4 games. They're coming off a bye. The Chiefs are always, under Andy Reid, will always be a good team off the bye. Why I'm saying this is an overreaction is they beat the Raiders when the Raiders were dealing with Henry Ruggs and coming off of John Gruden, and they barely survived the Giants. The last 2 wins over the Cowboys was impressive. That was a very impressive win. And I forgot the other one, but the reason why I think that this is an overreaction is because I think they're playoff contenders. I don't think they're there yet, and I don't even think it's safe to say they're going to win the division yet. They've had one very impressive game. The other one wasn't that impressive. I can't remember it, or I'm just dumb. But yeah, I think this is definitely an overreaction. Next game, or next take. Washington football team has their franchise quarterback in Taylor Heinicke. This is definitely an overreaction. Taylor Heinicke, I'm not going to take anything away from him. He's been playing very good football. But, let's be real. The real reason the Washington football team is winning games is because of their defense. Their defense has finally showed up. And Taylor Heinicke, I knock on Taylor Heinicke all the time on this podcast. I'm not going to act like I'm a Taylor Heinicke fanboy, but he's been playing good football. But he still is a one-read quarterback. He still either throws to Terry McLaurin or Logan Thomas or Ricky Seals-Jones, and is there's one other receiver he's starting to throw the ball to. I can't remember his name. It's not Cam Sims. I forget. But no, Taylor Heinicke is not the franchise guy. I think if I was them, I sign him for 1 more year, draft a high-caliber quarterback, high upside quarterback in either Matt Corral or Malik Willis and have them learn under Taylor Heineke and maybe Ryan Fitzpatrick if they bring him back on or he retires. But I think this is definitely an overreaction. The New England Patriots are the best team in the AFC East. I think this is an underreaction. Definitely the Patriots are the best team in the AFC East. No disagreement there. I think the Patriots are potentially the best team in the AFC, period. I also think they might be I think they might be the best team in football. I know that's definitely an overreaction, but I have been more right than not on the Patriots than any other team in the NFL, and I've been right about them every single step of the way. And why I think the Patriots are actually becoming more scary than they already are is, let's look at Mac Jones at the beginning of the year. Average intended air yards or average attempted air yards. I always forget. I gotta make sure I get that stat right next time. But was the lowest in the NFL. I think it was at like 3.7 for the first few weeks. Through week 12 or after week 12, Mac Jones led the league in average attempted air yards at 8.3. So now the Patriots are not afraid to throw the ball down the field, and now they can run the ball at will with Ramondre Stevenson, who I was right about, and Damian Harris, who I was right about, saying that Ramondre Stevenson was going to eventually take goal line reps away from Damian Harris, which I was right about. But no, I think this is definitely an underreaction. I think the Patriots are way better than the AFC East. I think they are and this is the other thing on the Patriots. They are 6-1 in AFC conference games. So they stack up amazing or exceptionally against any team that they stack up any team in their conference or any team they're going to see in the playoffs. So take that to the bank. Do with that what you will. The Cleveland Browns are QB away from making the Super Bowl. I think that's definitely an overreaction. I think, and as you guys know, Baker Mayfield is definitely holding this team back. I think they do have one of the most complete rosters in football, but I don't think they are good enough to where you can plug in anyone and they will make the Super Bowl. I think that is where the overreaction lies. Because Baker Mayfield, as much as I harp on him, he's not a horrible quarterback. He just has like little, like what's the word? He has Napoleon syndrome. That's what it is. He's just a little man who wants to be a big man, but will never be a big man. And this is coming from a little man. But yeah, I think I've said this multiple times, but I'll say it again if it's your first time listening. The Cleveland Browns are my dark horse to go out and get Deshaun Watson. I think if they get Deshaun Watson, they're definitely going to be competitors for the Super Bowl. I think they also need a wide receiver really bad. I think Jarvis Landry should under no circumstances be your wide receiver 1. And I don't think Donovan Peoples-Jones should be your wide receiver 2. I think if you have Landry as your 2 or DPJ as your 2 and the other one as your 3, and then you get like a Drake London or a Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson or someone, Traylon Burks with Deshaun Watson, they would be a very good football team. Obviously, they would not be able to draft a wide receiver if they traded for Deshaun Watson. The Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen are going to catch their stride come playoffs. I think this is an underreaction. I don't think necessarily they aren't in stride. I think they're definitely a playoff team. They are arguably the best defense in football, and I think the ceiling for them, they definitely can make the Super. I think they're in a Super Bowl window, but they could definitely be bounced at any point in the playoffs. And I know that sounds like dumb, like obviously anybody can, but I think at this point they're poised to make the wild card. And I'm going to be completely honest with you here. If they play the Colts, I think they lose that game, especially with how the Colts are playing. I know that Carson Wentz threw a ton of turnovers, returned the ball over a ton in that against the Buccaneers, but they went toe-to-toe with the Buccaneers. Like, I'm not even kidding. This may sound crazy, but that could potentially be the Super Bowl. It would be Colts-Bucks. And I really wouldn't be surprised. I think the Colts are a very well-rounded football team. But the Bills are also a very well-rounded football team. Why I think they aren't going to make it too far is you can't win games, especially playoff games, without being able to run the ball. And they have not found a way to do that successfully without putting Josh Allen at risk. So that's why I'm saying this is an underreaction. I think they're in stride. and I don't think they're a team that needs to catch their stride to make the playoffs. So it's kind of a weird take. The Bengals are just a very explosive air raid offense that cannot win otherwise. I thought this was one of the dumbest takes I saw all week. This is definitely an underreaction. This is one of the dumbest takes I've seen, and here's why. I know a lot of you out there that listen to this regularly don't think the Bengals are, what's the word? As good as their record. But I want to set this record straight. When the Bengals can run the ball and Joe Mixon doesn't have 27 attempts for 65 yards, they will win the game. And let's be clear here. They don't need Joe Burrow to throw 40 times to win football games. Joe Mixon just ran. This is what I'm talking about. That when they could run the ball, you really can't stop them because Jamar Chase is already a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL as a rookie. I don't think he's top 10 yet. I would have to think about that. I'm just saying that off the top of it. I haven't really thought about that until it just came out of my mouth. But Joe Mixon had 165 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think 2 touchdowns, maybe 3 touchdowns. The dude can't be stopped. And when he can't be when he's rolling, the Bengals are rolling because it makes defenses, they have to commit to stopping something. And if they commit to stopping Joe Mixon, they're going to get destroyed down the field because T. Higgins is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL, in my opinion. And Jamar Chase is also playing he's kind of in a little bit of I don't want to say a slump, but he's not playing as well as he has been the first few weeks. But no, this is definitely an underreaction. I think the Bengals are way better than just a very explosive air raid offense that cannot win otherwise because they just ran for 165 yards. So that was stupid. Anyway, here's the last story we're going to close this off with. Maybe we'll do one game of the week because I have 3, but we're already at 51 minutes. And I didn't think that this would take this long because I tried to put in more choppy segments, but I guess not. Last story. Are the Dolphins set at QB beyond 2021? I have been pleasantly surprised with Tua. And I did, if you were one of the first listeners, you know that I was very much so I think Tua's going to suck, but I don't know yet, but he's leaning towards suck. And I was wrong. I was definitely wrong about that. The Dolphins, the amount of pressure as a franchise and organization they put on that kid, for him to come out and play every week how he has been, to me, that is a franchise quarterback trait. I'm not going to say he's a guy yet, but definitely something you want to see from your franchise quarterback. I would think it's very tough for me personally, and I think for really anybody in the NFL, to go out and perform at their most 100% capability, best capability, if I told you every week, no matter who you were, hey, we're thinking about bringing in one of the best players in the league at your position to replace you, but why don't you go out and play this week? Because, sure, Tua had the support of Brian Flores, who I think has a terrible rap this season for no reason. Definitely was kind of in limbo land in the beginning of the year with his defense, but he was trying to win games with Jacoby Brissett. But I think that with Tua, look at the numbers. I don't have him written down like an idiot, but I didn't write him down. But look at the numbers. He's completing over 65% or close to 65% of his passes. He's thrown nearly double the amount of touchdowns to interceptions. And they're on a 3-game win streak since he's come back. I think it's kind of, I don't want to say that they beat the Saints, or the Bills, Bucks, and Colts, but good teams beat bad teams. And Tua has been at the forefront of beating those teams. And I don't want to knock on this thing too, who are his wide receivers? Because it's Myles Gaskin and Jalen Waddle, and one of them is a running back. He has Mike Gaseki, who That man is probably one of the most underrated players. If you are not a fantasy football player and you just watch football, Mike Gaseki is one of the most underrated tight ends in the NFL. He's not underrated in fantasy, but in football, he is extremely underrated. That man's ability to catch a ball with one hand, like his spectacular catch in Madden should be a 99. But yeah, I don't to this question, like for this story, I truly don't know if they are set at QB for 2020 beyond 2021, but I don't think they need to answer to that in 2022. I understand the timing of it all is like you either ride with Tua or you go get Deshaun Watson. But like I'm gonna be honest with you, and I'm just gonna be honest to what I've claimed on this podcast, to what I've supported on this podcast. I am not a fan of players with character flaws. I'm not a fan of players where if I'm a GM, if I'm an owner, if I'm a head coach, will my franchise quarterback be there next week? Will he do some dumb crap and not be there next week? Will he just go serial molest 100 masseuses and not be there next week? With Tua, there's certainty. If you can't tell, I'm a fan of continuity and certainty. Those are my two big things, especially when it comes to football players, especially at quarterback. I would never want to put myself or put my franchise, put my job at risk taking Dwayne Haskins. Because that's at the end of the day, that is my fault because I didn't do due diligence. With Tua, the only thing I'm concerned about is the talent. And if I'm analyzing how he's played this year, I would be happy to bring him back for another year. They got pretty good draft capital. The thing that's kind of killing them is the Saints are going on a tear. But other than that, they have pick 21 right now. Perfect pick to draft a linebacker, which is one of their biggest needs on defense. They could draft a starting Mike linebacker in Devin Lloyd, or they could get an exceptional weak side linebacker, potentially middle linebacker. He's a little bit small for my taste in Nakobe Dean. Or you straighten up the offensive line a little bit. You draft a Kenyon Green. You draft a Tyler Linderbaum if he's there. You draft a wide receiver to complement Jalen Waddle. I don't know, man. I think that the Dolphins are in a very good spot, especially if the defense keeps on. One of the biggest things that I've disagreed with so far about the Dolphins going into the offseason is one of their biggest positional needs is edge rusher. And they just drafted Jalen Phillips, who literally in this 3-week win streak is now the rookie is in second place for oh my God, my brain can't formulate this. Jalen Phillips has the second most sacks amongst rookies at 6. He's behind Micah Parsons and he's ahead of Azeez Ojulari, and he came out of nowhere. Like, I don't mean he came out of nowhere as in nobody knew who Jalen Phillips was. He was first round talent, but he has accumulated these sacks in a very small amount of time. Very small amount of time. But I think the QBs are the Dolphins are set at QB beyond 2021. Beyond 2022, who knows yet? But the door will be closed for Deshaun Watson. And I think that Tua could be their guy. I was wrong. I'll be honest. I was wrong about Tua. And I owe him that. I'm sorry, Tua. I was wrong about you. And then we're going to go through the most telling games of the week, but we're going to do this like rapid fire. I mean, under 5 minutes. I'm just going to give you my honest, unfiltered thoughts. Not too many stats. Not too many. Not too much of anything besides just the brain of a mic coming at you about these 3 games. So let's go into it. First game, Vikings at 49ers. So I've talked about the Vikings for a little bit. I think we talked about them a little bit in the last podcast. I don't know what to do with them because you need to rebuild. You need to start the rebuild at some point, but you're paying Kirk Cousins $66 million, and you're probably going to make the playoffs. But if you don't make the playoffs, you're going to fire Mike Zimmer, you're going to fire GM. Do you start the rebuild then? And even if you do, you're still going to be competitive enough where you're going to win a few games before you draft a new quarterback. So what do the Vikings do in 2022? Really depends on these next few weeks to see if they make the wild card or not, because if they don't, there's going to be changes at head coach. There's going to be changes at GM. I don't know with them. But the good thing is they have a lot of promising young talent. Justin Jefferson, Alexander Madison, Tevin. They drafted Christian Darrisaw. They have a lot of promise on this team. There's a lot of promise on this team. But why this was the most telling game of the week? The 49ers defense is definitely legit, especially their run defense, which is great because a lot of the NFC teams, if you haven't noticed, are more run heavy than the AFC teams. And they just held the Vikings, who are an exceptional run offense, to 67 yards between Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. And I think the Niners, they finally are like, Kyle Shanahan's done being a mean girl and stopped being upset with people when they don't wear pink on Wednesdays. And is throwing the ball to Brandon Ayuk more. Elijah Mitchell is just eating, absolutely eating. And Jimmy Garoppolo, like I've said all year, is a decent enough quarterback where he can win. He went to a Super Bowl. People want to knock on Jared Goff and say he went to a Super Bowl because of Sean McVay. I would take Jimmy Garoppolo over Jared Goff, if I'm being honest. I think they don't put Jimmy Garoppolo in a position to play football the way he wants to because he knows Kyle Shanahan hates me. I'm probably in his burn book. I'm not going to be on this team next year. They drafted my replacement. So, like, how do you go out and play good football in those circumstances? I think if they would just, encourage Jimmy a little bit more, they could be a deadly team. They already are good enough, and they're playing with, like, their own putting themselves against themselves. Like, that doesn't make sense, but they're, like, beating themselves from within. Next game. Browns at Ravens. I don't even know what to say about this, man. Like, if you want me to be honest, if we're trying to do this quick. Like, we started this podcast with me defending Daniel Jones, right? Because he's in the worst. This would be, like, I use the example of me at work. This would be the absolute opposite. Like, let's say I came out of Harvard. I got the best mentor possible at the firm. The CEO is mentoring me himself. He's built this amazing support system around me. And I just can't make it work because I suck. Like, you have Premier Microsoft Office. Let's imagine that exists. Where it's like PowerPoint, Excel, all that stuff on steroids. And for Baker Mayfield, that's Coach of the Year, offensive line, weapons out the butt. And you can't beat a team after they threw 4 interceptions. And here's the thing with Baker that I'm so sick of hearing from Browns fans. Oh, well, he's gritty. He plays hurt. Okay, dude, if you're hurt that bad, stop. Like, don't play. Why are you jeopardizing your team's playoff chances? By playing, if you're not going to play to the best of your ability. 2, Browns players have said there is no difference between Case Keenum and Baker Mayfield. 3, hold on. 3 just fell out of my head for a second. 3, not even Johnny Manziel, after a weekend down the Jersey Shore, ever once blamed the fans for his poor performances. Baker Mayfield literally has done that, which is baffling to me. That you're this franchise quarterback and you're going to go after the fans? The people that buy your jerseys, that want you to succeed, you're going to go after them? Bro, I don't think the Browns are making the playoffs, if you want me to be honest with you. And, like, it's gotten so bad that it was asked in a press conference, a Browns press conference, if Kevin Stefanski should bench Baker Mayfield. And, like, obviously he's like, why would I do that? And I think his confidence in that statement of why would I do that is because in his brain, he's like, oh my God, I have an out. I inherited this crap quarterback from an idiot GM, and it wasn't even the GM that we have right now. And the new GM, whose name I'm forgetting, is like, oh my God, we can get rid of him. and nobody will wonder why. Because at this point, if Kevin Stefanski lets him play and they miss the playoffs, like it's no question as to why they get rid of Baker Mayfield. That's why for these young quarterbacks, like this week, week 13, we have Joe Burrow versus Justin Herbert, which is going to be sick. It's going to be a great game. But it's a contemporary matchup. That's like Brady versus Peyton. We just saw like Big Ben versus Eli. Obviously, completely different skill sets, but... And Eli just threw 4 picks, and Big Ben mustered 10 points. He put together 10 points. Bro is trash. He is so... If you are defending Baker Mayfield, I understand it. Because you're probably a Browns fan. But dude. Last game we're going to talk about briefly. Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers versus the Los Angeles Rams at Lambeau. Aaron Rodgers basically discount double-checked all over the Rams. Rushing touchdown, one of the coldest pitchers in NFL history. Dunked on Jalen Ramsey, if that was even possible in this game. And the Rams are just there is not a more LA team than the LA Rams. You have all the superstars. You have the fashion. You have to be the flashiest team. You have to do the flashiest things. You have to be the center of attention. You have to be Kim Kardashian and Pete Davidson. You have to be, what's her name? The girl from Transformers. Megan Fox and Machine Gun Kelly. Like, you just gotta be divas. And you care more about being divas than you do winning football games. In my opinion, I could get flamed for that, but that's fine. But like they have done this thing where it's like Sean McVay revolutionized offenses around the world, and it worked. And then he was like, "All right, we don't got to do that anymore." Like, because they have Stafford and being able to 3-step drop and just send a bomb to Cooper Kupp worked for so long, they've completely forgotten what has made them so successful, which is pre-snap motion, which is play action, rolling out the pocket, hitting your checkdowns, running the ball. They don't do that anymore. They are just like craziness. And Matt Stafford deserves so much more heat than he's getting. He has thrown 5 interceptions in 4 weeks, and there was a bye. So 5 interceptions in 3 games. He has thrown more interceptions the past 3 games than he did through the first 8 weeks of the season. The Rams are in trouble, dude. And they were my Super Bowl favorites before the season. Like, they are in deep, deep waters. But anyway, that's going to do it for this podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you come back in the next one. But thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Check us out on Instagram and Twitter. I try to tweet out some live updates, breaking news, and some funny tweets when I can. And check us out on Instagram. We post our mock drafts over there. Mock drafts are on the channel, the YouTube channel. And if you're listening on podcasts, definitely check out our YouTube channel. It's the Pylon Cam. Same logo that the podcast has. But yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for everything, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.